All right, listeners, get ready for a deep dive today. You asked us to explore Chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita.
The Vibhuti Yoga.
Yeah, also known as the Book of Religion by the Heavenly Perfections. Whoa! Even the title is intense.
Yeah,
This chapter is famous for diving into the nature of the divine.
it really is.
And I have to admit, I'm already a little overwhelmed.
It definitely requires, a lot of focus and attention.
Oh, for sure.
The Bhagavad Gita itself is, well, it's foundational
Right.
in Hinduism, but its influence goes way beyond that. I mean, people from all walks of life have connected with it for centuries.
Oh, absolutely.
And in this chapter specifically, we see Krishna really revealing his true divine nature to Arjuna,
Right.
and how it shows up in everything around us.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack that. The divine nature, the manifestations, everything, and hopefully we'll also understand what's going on by the end.
That's a worthy challenge. Let's get into it.
Sounds good. So the chapter starts with Krishna saying that very few people truly know him. He says you need a special kind of sight, like a vision that comes from faith and enlightenment, to really get his divinity.
Right.
It's a pretty high bar to set right from the beginning.
Right, it is.
What's he trying to say here?
Well, I think Krishna is making this really important point about knowing about something versus truly understanding it,
Yeah.
He's saying that superficial knowledge, the kind you can get from reading or even from just like casual observation,
Right.
that's not enough when it comes to the divine. You need something more than that.
Yeah.
A different perspective that lets you see that divine essence that's woven into everything.
So it's not just about the facts and figures.
It's not just about the facts and figures.
It's about really experiencing the divine.
Yes, exactly. And that's where faith and enlightenment come in. It's not about blindly believing things. It's about cultivating a receptivity to a reality that might be beyond our normal everyday way of seeing things.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
And then he keeps going, and he describes himself as the source of all creation. He even gives these examples, like he's the source of our intellect, our emotions, our virtues,
Right.
even our vices. It's like he's saying everything we experience, good and bad, it all comes from him.
Yes, and this is a core concept in the Bhagavad Gita. The idea of Krishna as the ultimate ground of being. Everything comes from him. It flows from him. Think of it like the sun, right? The sun's light touches everything.
Yeah.
But each object that it shines on reflects that light differently.
I see.
Krishna is like that sun,
Okay.
that unchanging source. And
Yeah.
all the different qualities we see in the world and in ourselves are like those reflections.
I like that.
Unique, but still connected to that one source.
That's a great image. And then Krishna takes this idea of being the source even further. He applies it to some big names in Hindu mythology. He says he's the one who begotten the 7 chief saints, the elders 4, and the lordly manis. And through them, all of humanity. It really seems like he's hammering home this role as the ultimate creator.
He absolutely is. And by bringing up those figures that are so revered,
Yeah.
Krishna links his role as creator not just to, abstract qualities, but to the whole lineage of humanity.
I see.
As if he's saying, look, I'm not just the source of your thoughts and feelings, but of your very existence.
Wow.
I'm woven into the very fabric of your history.
And this idea of creation, it seems really tied to devotion. He talks about the wise cleaving to him,
Right.
praising him, and finding happiness and peace through that devotion. It's like he's saying, knowing about me is one thing, but loving me is the real key.
You've got it. You've really hit on a key point there.
All right.
Krishna is emphasizing the path of bhakti, which means devotion.
Right.
It's not about just understanding him intellectually, but about nurturing a loving relationship with him. He promises that those who truly dedicate themselves to him will find, well, deep fulfillment and liberation.
So it's not just knowing, it's about loving and surrendering.
Exactly. It's aligning your mind and your heart,
Yeah.
recognizing the divine within and nurturing a deep connection to it.
And how does Arjuna react to all this?
Well, he's completely in awe, obviously.
Right.
He acknowledges Krishna as the supreme god
Yeah.
and expresses his desire to understand Krishna's, and I quote, unnumbered forms.
Oh, wow.
And that sets the stage for what we can only describe as like a cosmic catalog of all these different ways Krishna manifests.
Cosmic catalog.
It's this remarkable literary device. Krishna responds to Arjuna's desire by launching into this incredible list, identifying himself with everything imaginable, from celestial bodies to, natural phenomena to
Sure.
human qualities. It's a poetic way of conveying that the divine is boundless.
Right.
It's woven into every aspect of our existence.
I like that. So let's talk about some of these specific manifestations,
Yeah.
because some of them are pretty surprising.
Hmm.
He says he's the Samaveda,
Mm.
the gem of flying steeds,
Yeah.
the winning roll and dice, the double eight,
Uh-huh.
even the silence in learning secret things.
Mhm.
What stands out to you from all of this?
What really gets me is just the sheer breadth and diversity of it all. It's not just the, grand, awe-inspiring stuff.
Right.
He includes things that seem really ordinary, like dice or silence.
Yeah.
It suggests that even the everyday things, they're infused with divinity, too.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to look closer, to see that spark of the divine glimmering in everything around us.
So, like, finding the extraordinary within the ordinary.
Pretty nicely. He's encouraging us to see things differently. Instead of the world just being a bunch of random, separate things,
Yeah.
he wants us to see the interconnectedness of it all, the way everything comes from and goes back to that one divine source.
And then he ends this whole incredible list with this statement that's both humbling and, just awe-inspiring. Nor tongue can tell, Arjuna, nor end of telling come of these my boundless glories. And I, who am all, and made it all, abide its separate Lord. He's saying his manifestations are literally infinite, right?
It is. He's acknowledging that human language,
Yeah.
even the language in sacred texts, can only give us a small glimpse of what divine reality actually is. It's like an invitation to move beyond words and concepts and to actually experience this interconnectedness directly, to feel it, deep down.
Wow. This is definitely a lot to absorb. Maybe we should take a pause here.
Yeah.
Let it all sink in before we keep going.
I agree. A lot to think about, huh?
It is, yeah. And I mean, we're just scratching the surface of one chapter in this huge book.
Exactly.
It's tough to condense all this ancient wisdom into like bite-sized pieces for everyone.
It really is.
But I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, we're doing great.
So far, we've talked about how Krishna is this ultimate source, that he manifests in everything.
Right.
And that devotion is like the key to understanding him.
Mm.
But what does it all mean for someone reading this, like, today?
Mm.
How can we take these ancient ideas and actually apply them to our lives now?
That's a great question. And it all comes back to, I think, what we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
this idea of interconnectedness.
Right.
If we really get what Krishna is saying,
Yeah.
if we believe that everything is a manifestation of the divine, it changes how we see the world and how we see ourselves in it.
Can you explain that a bit more? Like, how would it actually change things?
Well, imagine, you're seeing the divine in everything in nature, in the people you meet,
Okay.
even in the tough stuff you have to deal with. It's
Yeah.
about looking past the surface and seeing that unity that connects everything.
So instead of seeing the world as a bunch of separate, isolated things,
Exactly.
we start to see how everything's related and connected.
Yes. And realizing that can be so powerful.
Yeah.
It can lead to a sense of awe and wonder,
Right.
a deeper appreciation for the beauty and complexity of life.
Okay.
And it can foster compassion and empathy because you start to see yourself in everyone else,
I see. And I imagine it could even make some of those tough things a little easier to deal with,
Exactly.
knowing that you're not alone in your struggles,
You're not alone.
that those struggles are part of something bigger.
Yes, exactly. It's not about pretending that suffering and hardship don't exist,
Right.
but about seeing them in a new light as part of this bigger picture where everything is connected
Right.
and ultimately connected back to the divine.
It's almost like shifting from a me-centered view to a more holistic one.
Right. That's a great way to put it.
And that shift could have some pretty big effects on how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
Maybe it makes us more compassionate, more forgiving, more aware of how we impact the world around us.
Right.
Maybe it inspires us to act with more kindness and understanding, knowing that our actions ripple out and affect everything else.
Yes, exactly. And this is starting to sound a lot like, like mindfulness, right?
Oh.
Finding the divine in the everyday, being present in the moment.
Yeah. Are those ideas connected?
I think so, definitely. Mindfulness is all about, being present.
Right.
Paying attention to what's going on inside you without judging it.
Yeah.
And these teachings from the Bhagavad Gita, they're kind of like a cosmic mindfulness.
Oh, I like that.
An invitation to be aware of the divine presence
Mm.
in everything, in every moment.
Okay.
Not just when you're sitting quietly meditating, but even in the busyness of everyday life.
That's a great way to think about it. But it makes me wonder,
Oh, what's that?
if everything is a manifestation of Krishna,
Yeah,
if he's the source of both good and bad,
right.
how do we, square that with all the suffering we see in the world? How can we believe in a loving, benevolent God
Yeah.
when there's so much pain and injustice?
That's a question that's challenged people for centuries.
Right.
There's no easy answer.
Right.
But I think one way to approach it is through the concepts of karma and rebirth.
Okay, for our listeners who might not be familiar with those.
Oh, of course. Karma, basically, it's the idea that your actions have consequences.
Yeah.
Both in this life and in future lives.
Okay.
It's not about some god punishing you or rewarding you.
Right.
It's about cause and effect playing out over time.
I see.
Your actions create a kind of energy, a ripple effect.
Yeah.
That shapes your experiences. And suffering, well, it's often seen as the result of past actions, a way of working through, karmic debts.
So it's not about God punishing us.
Right.
It's more about us experiencing the consequences of our own choices
Exactly.
over many lifetimes.
And in that way of thinking,
Yeah.
the goal is to act in ways that create positive karma, to move towards liberation from suffering.
I see.
Not just for yourself, but
Yeah.
for everyone.
Which brings us back to devotion. It does. If having that loving relationship with Krishna is the key to liberation,
Yeah.
then it's not just about chanting or rituals.
Right.
It's about
Yeah.
living a life that reflects compassion and kindness and understanding.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with how you understand the divine.
And that's a lifelong process.
It is.
Constantly trying to embody those qualities that Krishna represents.
Exactly.
Not just in our spiritual practices,
Right.
but in how we treat other people, how we move through the world.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about reading about Krishna
No, it's not.
or hearing stories about him.
Right.
It's about seeing him reflected in the world around us and ultimately in ourselves.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
That's a pretty powerful takeaway.
It is.
And I think we've done a good job breaking down this really complex chapter.
I think so too.
But before we finish up,
Oh.
I have one last question for you. If everything really is a manifestation of Krishna, like he says, how should that change how we see the world and our place in it?
That's the big question, isn't it? I don't think there's one answer that'll work for everyone.
Right.
But for me, it's about looking deeper. Seeing that divine spark, not just in the big impressive things,
Yeah.
but in everything.
Oh,
in
yeah.
every creature, every rock, every tree.
So it's less about me against the world.
Right.
And more about realizing we're all part of something much bigger.
Exactly. And when you start to see things that way,
Yeah.
I think it changes you. Maybe you become more compassionate, more forgiving,
Yeah.
more aware of how your choices affect the world.
Okay.
It could even inspire you to act with more kindness and understanding because
Yeah.
you know that everything you do creates this ripple effect and it
Yeah.
touches everything, not just you.
It's a beautiful idea and definitely something worth working towards.
It is.
And maybe that's the real heart of the Bhagavad Gita. Not just in this chapter, but in the whole thing. It's calling us to wake up,
Right.
to see the divine in ourselves
Yes.
and in everything around us.
And to live our lives in a way that honors that.
You said it perfectly. The Bhagavad Gita, it's a timeless text, isn't it?
It really is. It keeps offering guidance
Right.
and inspiration to people searching for truth across cultures and generations.
And this chapter 10, with all this talk of the divine and how everything's connected, it's a great example of that wisdom.
It really is.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
We have.
We've talked about Krishna as the source of everything,
Yes.
dove into how vast his manifestations are,
Right.
and how understanding that can change how we see the world.
And our place in it.
Exactly.
It's been a fascinating journey today.
It has.
And I hope it inspires our listeners to keep exploring the Bhagavad Gita.
Me too. This ancient text has so much to offer.
It does.
So keep digging into those rich philosophical teachings. Who knows what you'll discover?
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today.
My pleasure.
Until next time.